Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to another session of reading of Mandukya Upanishad, a brief reading. So, I hope you're all well, and you have had a good week last week. Let's get into the reading, and I think beyond this point, it's more of a lot of sundry topics that Mr. Schwartz has put together. So, let's see what we have in store. We'll read for about 35-40 minutes, not more than that. We'll see however long we can get through the reading, and then once that is done, I'll give about 1 or 2 minutes if anybody wants to ask any questions. Again, for these sessions, I do not want to share any link or get anybody else on the panel to have any discussion or anything else. It's just pure. It's almost like reading for the sake of understanding and potentially practice. That's all. No discussion. Right? If you have any questions while you are practicing, post these sessions, then you can ask me or whoever it is that you feel like, ask them whenever you get a chance in other forums, basically. Yeah, the audio is pretty good. So let's get started here. All right. So we are reading a small book or a brief called Mandukya Upanishad, an ancient Sanskrit text on the nature of reality by James Swartz. And then we covered, these are some of the topics that we've already covered in the previous 3 sessions. The means of knowledge, what limitlessness doesn't mean. Right? Doesn't mean you'll get magical powers. That's what he's talking about. The waker dreamer and the deep sleeper, which is the core of the Upanishad, the 3 or 4 state framework. If I'm real, I have to exist all the time, which is what we covered last time. Today, we are going to get into the next subchapter or the subsection of this book called Vedanta and Meditation, which is very interesting. So, yeah, meditation, the way it is referred to in Sanskrit or in our darshanas, more or less is aligned with yoga darsana, right? Dhyana, as it is referred to in Bhagavad Gita, Dhyana yoga, basically, right? Which chapter of Gita is that? Check. I believe it is chapter 6 of the Gita. Okay. So here he is trying to see the parallels between Vedanta, which is the 6th darshana, Uttamimamsa, and meditation or the yoga or the dhyana. So let's what has proposed here. Okay. Vedanta and meditation. Even a careful reading of the Mandukya or a few teachings at the feet of a scriptural master would probably not produce the firm and lasting knowledge of oneself as the limitless I. Okay, that's why it's the entire experience of the limitless I, the Brahma Anubhava or the Maha Anubhava, as they refer to, is an experiential thing. It's not just a teaching, it's not just a learning, but it is an experiential thing that one has to work towards. So in the 8th century or whenever, historicity is not what we are after in these sessions. So here Schwartz says it was in the 8th century that Gaudapada did something. The contention is it was not in the 8th century AD or it was not in the 8th century in the, in the AD, but in the BCE that all this happened before Common Era. Not 8th century CE. So in the 8th century, a great sage, Gaudapada, added a meditation to the verses to help the seeker realize the self. In this meditation, the 3 states are symbolized by 3 sounds and the fourth state. The limitless I is referred to as soundless. So, meditation on the three states confers certain benefits, but meditation on the silence with the right understanding produces liberation. So, there are the three states, or three states are symbolized. So, we are talking about the Om chanting or Om meditation, right? So, the three syllables, A, U, and M, right? They symbolize certain things. However, the silence that follows the last right? So if you look at the Om chanting and the full cycle, so the Om and then there is a silence, and then there is Om and then there is silence, right? So symbolically or from a representation standpoint, the silence represents the fourth state or the Turiya, basically, right? And that also is referred to as the limitless I. Okay. Silence is twofold. So now he is referring to, he went straight to the silence, right? He's not worried about the sounds. He went straight to the silence. It is also known as the amatra in Sanskrit, right? Which is so there are three matras, there are three notes in Om, and then the fourth silence is known as the amatra, basically. Okay. So what is Schwartz saying? Silence is twofold. Relative silence, a negative state, is merely the absence of sound and not the self, right? So the absence of sound or the nilness is one type of silence. Because sound is so distracting, spiritual literature often prescribes cultivating relative silence. That means stay quiet kind of thing, right? Yeah, I'm going to be taking it easy while reading. I'm having my coffee as well, so I don't want to choke on my coffee. So, okay, because sound is so distracting, spiritual literature often prescribes cultivating relative silence. But the Upanishad's definition of sound includes mental and emotional noise. So it's not just the external silence, but there's also the internal silence, right? Your mind is silent, your emotions are stable, right? They're not going up and down and things like that. Often, only in relative silence do we realize how disturbed our consciousness is. So he's referring to consciousness in a bit of a loose manner here. Consciousness is never disturbed, you know. Consciousness is always the observer. It is the light, right? It's always shining. Now the thing is, if it shines on a lake, for example, that is very perturbed, you will notice the perturbations or the waves, basically. But if it is shining on something that is very still, then it will notice the stillness. What he's saying is, you still the wave, and then you'll realize how agitated the lake is normally, basically. Okay, fair enough. The absence of thought is also relative silence, right? So, as Osho puts it very eloquently, meditation is the state of no mind, right? When he says no mind, that means it's a blankness. There are no thoughts, basically. All right. That is why a blank mind is not enlightenment. Okay. The absence of thought is also relative silence. That is why a blank mind is not enlightenment. And this is very important to remember. So, what are the dhyana practitioners or the yoga practitioners trying to do? They are trying to still the mind, basically. Right? When you still the mind, all you get is a blank mind. But that by itself does not give you realization, basically, that you are the limitless I, uppercase I. The second kind of silence is absolute. Absolute means not opposed to sound. Absolute silence means there are no, is silence the opposite of sound? If it is the opposite of sound, then that cannot be the limitless I state, because in the limitless I state there are there's no duality, there's no sound, noise, all these dualities disappear. So this is the absolute silence, basically. Okay, so again it gets a little bit technical here, but slowly you will understand if you pay attention to what I'm saying. Absolute means not opposed to sound. Absolute silence is best realized in relative silence and could profitably be described as silence or awareness, because of which both sound and relative silence are known. Okay, the absolute silence is the self, the limitless I. All right, so he has presented the theoretical side of it. The absolute silence is not just the absence of thought or emotion. The absolute silence is the awareness that you are the limitless I. So he's essentially calling that absolute silence as that experience itself, basically, where you will know the relative silence as well as the relative sound, basically. Okay, next. So how do I get to absolute silence? Now he's coming to the actual. Okay, so I understand that Om chanting is there, and then you focus on the silence. How do I get to it? So how do I realize the absolute silence? Okay, let's see what he is presenting. A simple technique, I believe. Okay, what is the technique? The following simple technique, as old as the hills, introduces the meditator, the seeker, to the limitless I, which is the sought. What is the meditator seeking? They are seeking absolute silence or the limitless I. And this technique gets you to that, I believe. Okay. The body. Our relationship with the body reflects in how we sit. If holding the body up is difficult for physical reasons, lying down is acceptable if the tendency to sleep can be overcome as the mind empties. So this is one of the key problems that a lot of these yogic meditators have, which is you are meditating and then suddenly you become so peaceful that you will fall asleep, right? If all you are trying to achieve is falling asleep, then you don't need all these extreme techniques of realizing that you are it, basically, right? You can just sing a song or listen to some music or whatever, as most people do these days, and then fall asleep. That's not the point. That's not meditation, basically. Excuse me. Some go for the full lotus, the less physical, the half lotus, or the simple meditative poses evolved by Hatha Yoga. So basically, he's saying that the body has to be in a particular state for you to actually get into this meditative state, right? So there are all these yogic poses. You go to any yoga class, first they'll tell you, like get to the lotus pose, you do this pose, that pose, all kinds of poses, right? Okay. In India, where yoga evolved, people have no furniture. So sitting cross-legged on the ground is second nature. And this is a very big problem for the Westerners because there are certain tendons or structures within your legs where if they are not flexible from childhood and all you have done is strengthen them, it's very difficult for you to keep your knees on the floor and then stay cross-legged. The moment you cross your legs, the knees go up, basically, right? And that flexibility goes up all the way to the pelvis and all that. It's not easy, you know. And as you age, it becomes more difficult. But as kids, in India, everybody is used to just sitting cross-legged on the floor, just like on a flat surface. That's what he's referring to. It's second nature. If you're forever having to smile benignly through the pain in your feet because they are resting on top of the thighs, it's best to opt for an easy chair. So he's saying it's not important that the body is in a particular pose for you to get into this meditative state. You just have to make sure that the body doesn't get in the way, basically, right? Because if your legs are hurting, it's very hard to become meditative. Okay. Except for the attempt to awaken dormant energies in the body. So you can even sit in a chair, is what he's saying. Except in certain situations. What are those situations? Except for the attempt to awaken dormant energies in the body. So he's referring to probably some Kundalini practice or whatever. A practice not recommended for neophytes meaning starters. The position of the body isn't critical. It should be comfortable and the meditator prepared to take a short vacation from it. So as in like, you sit in a pose and then you have to do a lot of gyrations to undo that pose and it is very uncomfortable for you. All this is not the point. Okay. And you're not trying to do these like very special Kundalini practices where, you have to be in a certain state for it to ascend all these kinds of things. I'm not a big yoga practitioner myself, so don't ask me anything. You'll be disappointed. Okay, so just take a comfortable posture. Okay, so next subsection is attitude, I believe. Okay, on the mental level, the pose should be kingly or queenly. All right, what does that mean? Gracious, upright, poised, noble, and generous. Okay, gracious, upright, poised, noble, and generous. So you cannot just be like loosey goosey. You can't be lying on your bed, with your feet up and then listening to some, you know, music with the headphones, and then you cannot get into a meditative state. That's not the idea. The idea is sit in a pose that is comfortable and that is bold, basically. Okay. Gracious, upright, poised, noble, and generous. A careful, sensitive, inquiring state of mind, like a botanist patiently examining a delicate flower, is suggested. Okay, that's I believe the suggestion for the pose. The meditator should think of meditation as an afternoon on the beach, not a shift in the minds. So it should be an open exploration, right? At the same time, in a very peaceful state of mind. You should not think of it as work, as in like, oh God, I have to go do an 8 hour shift in the mines, right? Which is hard grind. That's what he's referring to. It should not be that way. It should be the other way. You are trying to examine your own, the thing that is given to you, right? As a means, as a vehicle for you to accomplish this ultimate reality of ultimate goal of experiencing the limitless I. That's your body as a upadhi. Okay. When the eyes are closed and you have settled in, what's next? Okay, so you did all these, you took a very noble and generous and poised pose. So now what? Ask for help. Obviously, if you knew who you were, you wouldn't be meditating in the first place. So by sitting down, you are really saying you don't know anything, the most essential ingredient. Most who get as far as the idea of meditation believe in a higher power, a god, a spirit guide, a guru figure, the saints, the universe, guidance, a deity, whatever. So the first thing I believe you need to do is you need to ask help from that higher power that you believe exists, if you do believe that. Okay. He's calling it various things. Okay. Whatever you believe in. Irrespective of the invocation's form, the limitless I will respond, I believe. So he's giving a lot of assurances, just like Krishna gave Arjuna assurances, right? Yeah. Ananyas chintayanto ma yejana pariyupasite tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyam is what Krishna said. You always think about me, I'll take care of your, uh, I'll take care of you, right? Similarly, he's saying you make an invocation to that infinite power or higher being, it will respond to you. He's saying, okay, the self, uppercase S, put the meditation idea in the mind in the first place. So everything that needs to happen will happen. So essentially, you have to go towards that. I want liberation, kind of a what do you call objective, basically, and then you invoke the higher power to help you. All right, good. Make a resolution to leave your worries and involvements behind. No entanglements. It's good to meditate in a place that isn't used for other activities. So find a small corner somewhere, whether it's in your room or in a temple or wherever, right? Find a corner where you can find that peace and then make that invocation and then ask for help. Okay. Feel satisfied you are making an effort to meditate, right? Third, clear the mind of memories of previous meditations, good or bad. So don't go back to what happened during your previous meditation session. Start fresh every day, right? Make the invocation, ask for help, and then start fresh. Erase your memory about it. Good, bad, ugly doesn't matter. Don't carry baggage. Okay. Trying to improve on a bad meditation or reproduce a good one is futile and only agitates the mind. You are trying to get rid of your mind or look beyond it. So you should not be caught in the memory of anything that happened. You are going past memory, and most importantly, you are going past this stupid thing called the intellect. Right? Sometimes it's pitiable that some people call themselves intellectuals. Right? You are well above an intellectual. Your natural state is a, an observer of intellect. Right? You are the drasta of the intellect. Why do you want to identify yourself with the intellect, which is a much smaller aspect of you, the infinite and limitless I, self, rather? Okay. So sit and erase your memory of the previous meditation experiences. Very good. Hi, Joe. How are you? I just saw your comment. Okay. The next sub chapter is body scan, I believe. All right. What's the body scan? After the invocation, the first part of the meditation involves scanning and relaxing the body from the feet up. Now he's getting into a little bit more of a yoga technique. If you have a hard time relaxing your feet, use a little visualization. Okay. Imagine you are in your feet as a ball of warm, peaceful, light filled consciousness and expand your presence until the feet are hollow. Then bore your way up the legs, relaxing all the muscles, releasing tension in the ankles, knees, and hips. So, again, as I said, this tension everywhere in the muscles is a very Western thing. Some of us don't have it. At least I don't have it. Some people do feel tense in their body for whatever reason, right? Their body is not in a very relaxed state naturally. So you have to get it to a relaxed state, right? Take your time. It may seem a cheap trick, but isn't as far-fetched as it seems because the body is a vast field of consciousness, not a constipated little ball of matter. Hmm. If the ball of light doesn't work physically, it doesn't work physically, relax your way up the legs. So whatever it takes for you to get into a relaxed position so that there is no tension in your body, do that is what he's saying. Right. And he just gave an example of what works for him probably, you know, because ultimately if your body is very tensed up, then it's very difficult to ignore it because the body has a way of capturing the mind's attention. They are so tightly wound together that over practice only you can detach the two. Like, for example, the Ramana Maharshi example of even saying that the pain belongs to the body and not me, right? It's a very difficult state to achieve because pain is such that it pulls you, it pulls the attention, right? When you're in severe pain, it's not easy to just become very meditative, basically. Okay, that's the reality of it. Okay, if the ball of light, yes, hello, sir. It may seem a cheap trick, but isn't as far-fetched as it seems. Okay, if the ball of light doesn't work, physically relax your way up. Spend a bit of time working on the abdominal and stomach regions to neutralize the lower part of the trunk because they are associated with the power and fear chakra and waste removal. These organs often carry negative energy. Okay, so he's talking about the belly button down, right? Remove all the tension and whatever it is, right? Move up and explore the chest, its connection. So now he is actually going up one chakra at a time, right? All these seven chakras or six or whatever it is. Again, not a yoga practitioner, don't know much about it. I'm just reading what Schwartz is giving me. Move up and explore the chest. Its connection with the emotional centers causes angry and unforgiving feelings to lodge there, where in your uh, chest and upper part of your body, I believe. So the muscles are often tight. Leisurely scan this area, leaving it light filled and relaxed. Then work up to the neck and shoulders. Much mental tension accumulates here, so take your time. When it's relaxed, move out to the tips of the fingers and hollow out the arms like you did the legs. So shine that consciousness through your body so that all the tension is gone. Then redo the neck and shoulders. The face we carry around in the world usually isn't our real face. So we need to do something to get it back to normal, I believe. Okay. Work around the chin, mouth, and cheeks first, then up to the eyes and forehead. You'll find lots of vibrations hovering around these regions. So release the muscles, supporting them, let them dissolve, I believe. All the tension should dissolve. When you finish the face, when you are finished, the face should be expressionless. The smile or frown means too much energy is being left behind. So the emotional energy is still there if you're trying to make a face or whatever it is. Aim for an indifferent look of a Buddha or the peaceful face of the dead. Okay. The idea behind all this scanning and relaxing is to prepare the body for your exit. Thinking of the body as an automobile and yourself as the driver may be helpful. So you are the driver and you are getting out of the car and locking it basically. The driver has returned from a long day on the road, is going to park the car in the garage and enter his or her warm, comfortable home for the evening. Before you park it for good, check the whole thing to see that it's comfortable in its seat and turn your attention to the breath. So you do all this like hollowing out of all the feelings, emotions, etc., etc., and then you get out of the body basically, and then focus on the breath, the pranavayu or whatever. Okay. Interesting. So now Schwartz is getting into the breath. Okay. Fine. Deep breath, as you have probably noticed, goes in and out nicely on its own. The idea in the first part of this meditation is to watch the breath, not breathe consciously. Although you may notice that observing the breath consciousizes it a little bit. Okay, this is a new word. Consciousizing. All right, I want to. So your if you start noticing your breath, you become a more conscious. That's how things are. You suddenly start paying attention to your finger, you become more conscious of it, right? You pay more attention. Otherwise, the finger lies around the way it is, right? But then you look at it and then say, oh, okay, now this finger, I'm noticing it, right? Then suddenly you are aware that, oh, this finger is part of my body. How come this is long, short, whatever, all kinds of things, right? You become more conscious of it. Similarly, the breath, there's a natural cadence to your own breath. But then you start observing it, then you consciousize it. You become conscious of it, basically, right? Not to worry, it will soon settle down and return to its normal pattern. So some people, when they go to the doctor, for example, if they're checking the blood pressure, right? So the nurse comes and then they'll say, hey, let me check your pulse and blood pressure. As soon as somebody says that, sometimes people who have anxiety, suddenly the blood pressure goes up. So that's the measurement effect, right? So sometimes the nurses, they take one or two measurements to make sure that it is a normal blood pressure that they are measuring, right? So that's what Schwartz is saying. You start noticing your breath, suddenly you become conscious of it. It might become speed up, speed down, whatever it is. Don't worry, after some time it will get back to normal, basically. Although a sophisticated yogic science of breath control has evolved, pranayama basically, working with the breath is not profound. As far as meditation is concerned, we don't want to control anything. We want to just observe, not control, right? Control means ego and a lot of work. And the point of meditation is to relax, not just physically, but mentally. Watching the breath gives the mind something to do, keeps it out of trouble. All right. As mentioned above, the mind always wants a bit of change, a little glamour or excitement, and doesn't appreciate hard work. And this guy is like hypercritical of the mind, like it. Before long, the meditator will find watching the breath boring. Okay, but boring is good. Now he has arrived where I am in life. Boring is outstanding. I want boring. Boring is my thing. Learning to enjoy boredom is one of the benefits of meditation. Sitting quietly doing nothing. Spring comes and the grass grows by itself, right? As some of the one of the Zen punchlines goes, right? I like boring, basically. That's what he's saying. Learning to enjoy boredom is one of the benefits of meditation, right? You're not constantly pushed, you're not pushing yourself to do something, do something, do something. It's just like you just be. That's it. That's what Schwartz is saying. Okay. At this point, I give the mind a challenge by training my attention to ride on the breath as it goes in and out. Now you are getting a little bit more uh, uh, you are dividing the breath into various stages, right? So that way the mind is able to know, say, okay, I'm focusing on breathing in, focusing on breathing out, something for the mind to get engaged. Okay. When the breath is out, the attention is out. When the breath comes flowing in, the attention comes with it, as if riding an upside down swing. Okay. Of course, the mind will have its little trips. So you might discover it stuck in or eating Chateaubriand at the 21 Club between the in breath and out breath. All right. And he has been to interesting places that you can tell already. The meditator should pull it back. Try to synchronize it with the breath. You don't have to be 100%. Get the mind to write perfectly on every breath. Don't bother to get upset if it doesn't work immediately. Take your time. It will come. Anyone can do it. Meditation is not about the breath anyway. The breath is just a tool. Excuse me. How long should one work up with the breath? There's no hard and fast rule. Sometimes 5 or 10 minutes, sometimes longer. When you are what you are looking for, what you are looking for is a sign that the mind is getting quiet because it settles down quickly when synchronized with the breath. So this is an ancient yogic sort of a practice, as he's pointing out. Let me do a quick audio check. Okay, it's working. So they say that if you are able to focus on the breath, it quiets the mind down very fast. Okay, it's for people to try and experience, basically. What you are looking for is a sign that the mind is getting quiet because it settles down quickly when synchronized with the breath. If you see that the mind and breath are synchronizing, use surplus attention to release pent up thoughts and feelings on the out breath. Don't relate to or analyze the thoughts at this point. Simply pay attention to what you're doing and let the mind empty on its own. Just as the out breath cleanses the body, releasing thoughts detoxifies the mind. So when we exhale, all um, the uh, the bad gases from the blood, right? They go out. Similarly, releasing the thoughts detoxifies the mind, right? So why synchronize it with the breath? Because the breath is what cleanses your blood. Similarly, your thoughts, if they're synchronized with the breath, it will detoxify your mind. It will clean your mind. That's what he's saying. Okay. From a meditative perspective, the meditator's relationship to the thoughts is more important than the thoughts themselves. Later, when you're seeing from the self, it may be helpful to analyze them, even though ultimately all thoughts are useless. Bang, bang. Okay, drum roll. You can analyze your thoughts all you want, but lo and behold, all thoughts are useless. Congratulations, Swartz. Mr. Swartz, you have arrived. At this point, don't worry about losing them. They'll be back. If there is one thing that the mind is capable of doing, it is reproducing all kinds of drama, basically. So don't worry about losing a damn thought. It will come back. The mind will never completely empty. So don't worry. The point is to take a little pressure off, help it to quiet down. Okay. I like this already. Okay. Now the last part of it, or the most important part of it, the silence. Okay. The mind is becoming quiet when you start to be conscious of all sorts of sounds you weren't previously aware of. You never hear the clock ticking because the mind, formerly occupied with its thoughts, is emptying. You may hear the heartbeat, the scratching of breath as it goes in and out, snippets of conversation taking place blocks away, the hum of the kitchen refrigerator, a fly buzzing lazily in the adjoining room. So I'm sure Schwartz has done his paces in terms of meditating because a lot of people say this is what they experience, right? When you slow down, when you empty your mind, suddenly you become aware of many things that previously you were ignoring, right? Because you are focused on something else. The mind is busy doing something else. Once you slow the mind, empty the thoughts, suddenly the level of awareness to your surroundings automatically goes up. The thoughts may be amplified, larger than life, or slower, as if they were slogging through molasses. You might start picking up on them as they start rather than at the end of their cycle. You may suddenly become aware of where the thought is originating, as opposed to becoming aware of the thought after it originates, basically, right? You'll notice these things because you are now surrounded by a bubble of silence, which, depending on the quietude of the mind, may be hardly noticeable or roar as it does out on the great plains in the dead of a summer night. A beautiful description. Okay. When the silence appears as tangible presence, take your attention from the breath and fix it on the silence. Wonderful. Because it served its purpose. The breath should drop out of consciousness or seem very light, faint, far away, and irrelevant. Sometimes the mind gets completely swallowed by the silence, and you find yourself deep within yourself, uppercase S, unaware of the breath, the noises in the room, your thoughts, absolutely everything. A state similar to conscious sleep, samadhi, basically. Okay, beautifully put. Conscious sleep is samadhi, basically, right? Time dissolves and you're overcome with an ecstatic peacefulness, difficult to describe. Many unusual experiences can happen when the mind is quiet. Let them happen. Don't cling. Okay. It's like trying to remember a dream while the dream is happening. Let the dream happen. Okay. Don't cling to those dream thoughts. If you remember it, you'll remember it. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Right. Similarly, here he is saying, once you have achieved that silence, let the silence happen. Don't try to cling to what's happening when the silence comes. Okay. All experience, like thought, is essentially transitory. not subject to ego control. And the purpose of meditation is not to produce specific pleasurable experiences, but to inquire into the nature of the self and the mind. So here I'd like to point out some in the last, when COVID was happening and everybody was going crazy, there were a few conversations that I saw between some highly exalted, like celebrity type people, and certain highly exalted, or at least highly popular yogic people, right? And all they were talking about was the experience. So tell me if I get the experience. Tell me if I get the experience. It's not about the experience. It's about the inquiry that happens when everything is quiet, right? Because the ultimate goal is not the experience, which is where yoga sort of stops. It's not about the experience. It's about the inquiry that happens when there is that experience. It is the inquiry that happens when the mind is still, right? This is exactly why stilling the mind by itself is not going to lead to liberation. Yoga Darshana's biggest falling is that. And that's what Shankara points out also in his Brahma Sutra Bhashyas. The stilling of the mind happens every day. You are in Sushupti for almost 6 hours, 7 hours, depending on how long you sleep and then how long you are in the deep sleep state. So why are you not already realized? Because you are not inquiring. So the deep inquiry that happens, not through the mind, but when the mind is silent, is absent in the yogic practice. The silent experience is not the be all and end all. Okay. Unless, okay, here. And the purpose of meditation, this is like a punchline here, basically, right? Purpose of meditation is not to produce specific pleasurable experiences. You're after the pleasure, sir, right? I, pleasure and pain, they are part of the duality, right? The two ends of the spectrum. So you're after one, which means you're not after liberation. You want to go past that, basically. But to inquire into the nature of the self and the mind, that is the purpose of meditation. Very well put. Unless you are aiming for nirvikalpa samadhi, the state without thought, which will not give self knowledge, see that you remain alert and allow the senses and mind to function. The presence of thought does not affect the silence. The ideal situation is to observe the thoughts and sounds appear into and disappear out of the silence like phantoms. The silent, peaceful awareness in which they appear is experienced as a rock like, real, luminous, and eternal presence. Become aware of the silence that exists between the appearance of the thoughts and feelings and the lack of them, basically, because the silence persists. That is the turiya that exists before even potentiality occurs, basically. Okay, that is the potential of all potentials, and that exists, beautifully put here, like a rock, right? Real, luminous, and eternal presence. The experience of the silence is the essence of meditation because it lets the meditator observe firsthand the insubstantiality and unreality of the body mind instrument in a way reading books and listening to lectures can never do. Period. Wonderful. If the ego insists on intruding, make itself uncomfortable in the silence, trying to distract like a needy child. If the ego insists on intruding, making itself uncomfortable in the silence, trying to distract like a needy child, you can teach it to surrender, allow the thoughts and feelings to arise and fall without interference. I think of the silence with the uppercase S as the altar of the inner temple and take great pleasure witnessing the thoughts and feelings arise out of and disappear back into it. The discipline of meditation involves a struggle with the ego to keep attention fixed on the silence. So he's talking about ego, the ahankara, I believe, in this case, right? So he is saying, and again, probably he's also a disciple of Ramana, right? So there is obviously a focus on this ego interfering with the silence. Maybe it happens, maybe it does not, right? But they do tend to talk a lot about how the ego suddenly comes in, the I feeling that it remains and all that. But according to the Sankhya ladder, by the time you get to the intellect and you start observing your thoughts and all those things, the ego must already be gone, the I feeling, right? But anyway, it's a technicality that people should not be concerned about, right? So if it intrudes with the silence, let it surrender, is what he's saying. I think of silence as the altar. This is also a beautiful description. Think of silence as the altar of in of the inner temple, and take great pleasure witnessing the thoughts and feelings arise out of and disappear back into it. The discipline of meditation involves a struggle with the ego to keep attention fixed on the silence. If the silence is particularly deep or radiant, the ego will be so stunned that it will surrender completely, like an awestruck kid at a carnival. But this is not always the case, not because the silence is unattractive, but because powerful samskaras carry the attention far afield. So, in this state of silence and meditation and deep experience of the silence, right? Um, you are at loggerheads with your own samskaras. At this point, the external world doesn't matter. It's an internal struggle that you are trying to, the samskaras will pull you away from the eternal. And the eternal can stun those samskaras into completely extinct, getting extinct, basically. But it comes with practice, right? It's not that straightforward, basically, because these samskaras have been cultivated by you very carefully, right? So carefully that you are more attached to the samskaras than to that silence that is ultimately the true nature of you. Okay. One wouldn't think to visualize or chant anything at this time because the experience of the silence itself is fascinating and fulfilling. However, sometimes the mantra arises spontaneously, chanting itself. Yeah, exactly, right? Because then you might actually experience this out of body experience or whatever, where the body is doing the chanting, but you are just observing it. And I'll relate it back to a comment. Yesterday, I was watching a video on like the World Cup soccer, right? And there was this one video clip I was watching where there is this Diego Maradona 1986 goal against England, right? And then there are two also highly accomplished forwards, Gary Lineker and then Jurgen Klinsmann from Germany, right? Lineker was from the UK, England. And they both said there's something very strikingly unique about Maradona and Messi, right? The way they play soccer. And they said something like they play soccer as if they are not the person actually dribbling the ball or playing, but they are actually above the stadium observing everything that is going on, right? So it's as if the person that's actually doing the dribbling and everything, when they are in the flow, they are observing the game from outside, right? They play in such a way. It's as if they are aware of the entire football field, the opposing team, their team, and everything. But they are just that one person that is visible to you, right? So I thought that that's very interesting. So here, Schwartz is almost referring to that kind of an experience where the chanting is happening on its own spontaneously, but you are not the one doing it. You are just observing the chanting happen, right? Sometimes the mantra arises spontaneously, chanting itself. Occasionally, when a particular subtle part of the unconscious is active, wonderful inner visions manifest. So this is the next step, or this is one of the things that can happen. The meditation is not creating the silence, although it may seem so. The silence is the substratum of all experience, the self luminous consciousness that is the source of every perception, the limitless I. The meditation technique simply withdraws enough consciousness from the body and mind to allow the ever present and apparently hidden silence to manifest. For the silence to manifest, so you have to get rid of these two manufacturing defects, right? Chittamala and then Vikshepa. Avarana and Vikshepa, as they say, right? The boundary and the dispersion, right? So if you are able to get rid of both of them, the perturbation, um, the dispersion that happens, then the lake is still. When the lake is still, you can observe the silence, the true nature of silence itself, basically. Okay. Let's see, probably one more page and then we'll close. Once the meditator is proficient in contacting the silence, the question of what the silence is and what sort of relationship one wants will arise. right? So yogis stop with the silence, right? The Advaitins, they go beyond that and then say, what is the nature of this silence? Okay. Although there are no rules, I like to encourage the meditator to explore the boundaries between his or her waking, dreaming self and the silence. The silence is the most tangible manifestation of the self, the realization of which frees one from suffering. There are many ways to relate to the self, uppercase, but I like to see it as an intimate, friendly lover in whose presence I feel terribly comfortable. Interesting. So that is how he characterizes, Swartz characterizes that silence. Try surrendering, melting into its compassionate embrace, allowing the watcher, the concentrator, the meditator to dissolve into it. When the ego opens up to the silence, its cleansing waters flood in, healing body and mind, basically, right? So maybe he has exposed himself to all this, like the Krishna consciousness type of idea as well, where that's exactly the the uh, the silence or the self as a um, uh, prema tattva, basically, right? It is a um, it is a tattva of love. The characteristic of this silence is love, infinite, unjudging, basically, right? And I've seen many of my Christian friends in the West have this because the Christian dogma actually is very strong, right? It says that, hey, you are the sinner, you are doing wrong, you have to confess. So there's always this judgmental kind of scale that they bring to a person's experience. So this silence or the meditation as a means to uh, unwinding all that judgment, right? Where he is referring to this, um, for example, Schwartz is saying, intimate, friendly lover in whose presence I feel terribly comfortable, as opposed to this judgmental, did you sin? Did you do this? Did you do that? Right? So that's the contrast. So we do not have that, right? In the Indian context or the Sanatan context, there's no judgment like that, right? So in this case, we probably can go one step ahead and say, what is the true nature of the self, right? And then some of it has been documented in the Brahma Sutras, but everybody can have their own experience, basically, right? The silence may not seem so much like silent, and then there's another beautiful sentence he threw in already. We read that when the ego opens up to the silence, its cleansing waters flood in, healing body and mind, right? Healing people from this judgment that you are sinners, you are this, you are that, you have to go confess, you have to go tell somebody, right? All that is healed, basically. All that trauma, probably from very early when they got indoctrinated into this dogma, right? The silence may not seem so much like silence as peace, a sense of being completely at rest, fulfilled, and unconcerned. The peace that passeth understanding, right? Um, so he is associating peace with this silence, or as inexplicable, bubbling blissfulness, or limitlessness, emptiness, and fullness. So he has included emptiness, fullness, limitlessness, everything in one sentence. The emptiness is the Buddhist experience or the characterization. The fullness is the Sanatan characterization, basically. So Sunya versus Purna, right? It could be infinite love, for example, if that's the kind of healing that you're seeking, or if that's your predominant um, uh, problem, or if your predominant sort of exposure to the world, basically. Contact of the mind with the self can be described in many ways, all equally valid. But so now he has put this in bold. Experience of the self through the mind is not self knowledge or enlightenment. Enlightenment is the rediscovery of oneself as the self. So at some point in time, you are contacting or you are in touch with the self through the mind. The mind also has to go away. And the idea is you rediscover yourself not as the mind, but as the silence or the self or the limitless consciousness. So I think, therefore I am means that you have completely trapped yourself in the mind, right? I am, therefore I am is the experience that you are seeking, or the realization, not just the experience. Get in touch with the silence, inquire, and then you realize that you are the silence, basically. The question of what illumines the blissful, silent, peaceful presence needs to be understood, needs to be answered, right? So, what is it that illumines? So, now how is it self illuminating? Let's see what he says. How is this self, which is routinely ignored in the waking, dream, and deep sleep state, suddenly available for experience? It can't be known through the senses or through the mind in its normal thought and emotion dominated state. So, how is it known? Is there someone other than it with uppercase I illuminating it, or is it illuminating itself? Exactly. What is the name? So, what is the druk for the druk itself? Basically, right? Is the druk a drisya for some other druk? What is the nature of the self, and how does it relate to me? Right? To the me, I think I am. Right? Meditation, all the little tricks, working with the breath and the mind simply creates an inner environment conducive to the exploration of the self. So now he has given this example of analogy of the temple. Okay, so I want to extend it one more step. So he is saying all these little tricks will help you to create an environment conducive to the exploration of the self. If you need a conducive environment in your own mind in order to get in touch with the self, is it not fair that a temple, a physical structure, needs to have a certain kind of a physical structure with certain framework for you to get in touch with that deity that is in the inner sanctum sanctorum? Is it unfair to think that that is required? I don't think so, basically, right? So all these stupid people asking questions about, hey, why do you have to go to the temple? Why you want to get in touch with that deity? This is the framework that you need around to get into that state of mind or get into that state of exalted consciousness. It's as simple as that, right? Certain environments are required for certain things to manifest. You cannot perform an operation on the roadside. You need an operation theater. You cannot just go and do something in an environment that is not conducive to doing that thing. It's as simple as that. Okay. As mentioned, most seekers have an exaggerated and fantastic notion of enlightenment because their views are so unrealistic. They are not going to get even when it is staring them in the face, right? Much as people have fantastic expectations of what happens when you go into a temple. The best source of knowledge on the nature of the self is scripture, particularly very old texts. Okay, the best source of knowledge on the nature of the self or the limitless consciousness is scripture, or what is written, codified experience, which is essentially what Upanishads are, particularly very old texts, the Mandukya and other Upanishads, for example. These sources, representing purified, factual, collective knowledge, can be trusted because no specific ego is responsible for them. It is the absence of ego, it is the dissolution of ego that has resulted in that experience, and that experience has been codified. Nobody is asking you to follow it. Just take a look and see if it makes sense to you. There is no compulsion whatsoever. For example, the following verses from an 8th century text, Atma Bodha by Shankaracharya, a reformulation of Upanishadic ideas written in the first person, presents the self as pure knowledge. Okay, so with this, I'm going to stop. So let's look at Shankara's Atma Bodha in a bit more detail. So he has given, I think, 8 or 7 slokas here, right? So in English. So I'll try to get the original Sanskrit and then we can read it and then we can look at it in English. But I am going to stop here and then wait for about 30 seconds if there are any questions in the chat, right? But otherwise, I'll be very honest with you. When I was reading all this last night, I felt like, okay, why is he going into all this detail about meditation and all that? I am a little bit allergic myself to all these like tricks that he says are tricks for calming your mind and all that. But upon reading it again this morning, kudos to Schwartz, basically. Okay. I am thoroughly impressed, and more importantly, I think he has learned from the right gurus, and he's the path that he has described is very much aligned with what I think is the path that people should follow, basically. So, outstanding brief. This is, and I'm glad that I picked it up. I don't even know how I came across it, basically. All right. So 30 seconds of silence. Any questions, I'll answer or we can discuss. Otherwise, I'll close the session in about 30 seconds. All right. No questions. So thank you very much for following along, whoever did, and listening. And if you like the content, if you like these kinds of discussions or discourses, please like and subscribe so that it will reach more people. The world needs silence more than anything else, and we all know it. So with that, have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Uh, Goodbye, and then we will meet again for another session of reading of this Mandukya brief.